Thank you, Cindy. Good afternoon, and welcome to the first plenary session of the 2012 CAF Apprenticeship Forum Conference. As Cindy mentioned, this panel will set the tone for the conference presentations and discussions to follow. We will hear from the CEOs of 3 different organizations, each of whom will address one of the 3 apprenticeship strategies for success suggested in our conference theme, diversity, innovation, and engagement. To begin, it now gives me great pleasure to introduce our panel and ask them to join me here on the stage. From Regina, the President and CEO of the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies, Mr. Randell Morris. Have a seat. Yep. From Toronto, Ontario, formerly from Saskatchewan, the Registrar and Chief Executive Officer of the Ontario College of Trades, Mr. Bob Guthrie. And from Vancouver, British Columbia, the President of British Columbia Institute of Technology, Dr. Don Wright. I heard earlier today that Don is actually also from Saskatchewan. As we begin our panel presentation, just a few comments on the format for this session. I'll invite each of our panelists to speak for 10 to 15 minutes about his organization and perspective on diversity, innovation, or engagement as a success strategy for apprenticeship training. After all of our panelists have spoken, I'll open the floor to questions from the audience. Then to conclude, I'll ask each of our panelists to provide a brief closing statement. Randell, could you please start us off with your opening remarks?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. It's my pleasure to be here to represent the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies, and welcome to those of you not from Saskatchewan. I'm actually from Saskatoon, and I blew in a little while earlier this afternoon myself. It's always a pleasure coming down to Regina and getting a chance to look around this vast province, and it's fantastic, and I just love the growth and development that we have. Good afternoon to the Minister and all of our delegates and all of our distinguished guests here in attendance. It's great to be here. The presentation I'm going to talk about, it will highlight an innovative partnership between industry, SIT, and Apprenticeship and Trade Commission, SATCC. And since 1998, our Construction Career Centers and SIT's Joint Training Commission, we've been extremely successful at certifying journey persons through a unique program. I'd like to walk you through that if I can. It indentures, mentors, and trains First Nation men and women apprentices. The presentation hopefully will highlight how and why the model has been and continues to be so successful. Before I get into the actual career centers, I was hoping to tell you a little bit about SIT and where we are and where we've come from. SIT stands for the Saskatchewan Indian Institute of Technologies. I like to think we're a full-service college, if you will. We may not be as big as our friends from Algonquin or BCIT, but we nonetheless have the same fundamental operations that we have. We started back in 1976 in the province of Saskatchewan. We're in Saskatoon primarily, and then we kind of branched out. We did a lot of life skills training, we did a lot of adult basic education training, and we still do a lot of that today. However, as we moved into the 80s and we moved into the 90s, we branched out our locations to include other parts of Saskatchewan, not just Saskatoon and Regina. We had places in Yorkton, we had places in North Battleford, we had places in the north, we had places that are very hard to serve in the north as well. As you know, there is a growing phenomenon about the First Nation people in the provinces, especially in the west. It's the fastest growing population in the country. We too had to grow, we had to expand. And into the 90s, we then moved around. We offered a lot more different slates of our programming. We had a big partner, and that was SIAST. We'd receive all of our training packages from them, and then we'd deliver it on site, essentially like a regional college. As we moved into the 90s, our growth and development and demographic numbers were up and high, and we thought, boy, it would be kind of neat if we did it on our own, so we didn't have to rely on a big partner, and we could provide our own credit transfer. It didn't happen overnight, but in 2000 we received the SIT Act to the province of Saskatchewan that allows us to do such things. We can grant our own credit, provide our own credit transfer, and it makes us very unique in the country as we are governed solely by a First Nation controlled board. We're the only one of its kind throughout North America in a sense as well. So that's a little bit of SIT. We do have an adult basic education program. We have a business and IT division. We have health and community studies. We have a workforce development. We have grown in numbers and size considerably. I've been with SIT for 20 years. It'll be 20 years in the fall. And I've seen the organization go from about 60 people that work there with about 200 students to today we have well over 250 staff and about 2,500 students. Those particular amounts of students at 2,500, well over half of them are contained within our trades and industrial programs. It is there that our career centers and the Joint Training Commission is housed. I do notice there's lots of folks that work for the career centers. There's a table over there and there, some over here. So if I don't give you the right information, these guys will come up to me after and say that's the wrong stat, Randell. So I wanted to get my stuff in about SIT first, and then tell you how this came about. And okay, we've been around for 36 years now. That's our trade program. This is really what I want to talk about. I'm sorry, I have a cold too, and it's kind of winning on me. Back in 1998, there was a group of folks that were going to build the First Nation University of Canada. If you do get a chance to go to the legislative buildings and you want to go out and see another building, the First Nation University of Canada building is fantastic. While they were building it, they thought, well, it would be great if we had some First Nation or Aboriginal kids to help build this thing. But there was a gap in skill, attaining, and attraction. So the powers that be, the Apprenticeship Commission, the Construction Association of Saskatchewan, SIT, the provincial government at the time through their CAF-FCA division, approached us and said, would you be interested in doing something like this? And how can we get our heads around it? How can we wrap our minds around accessing that, bringing them into the economy? The work is right there. How do we get them? The career centers took off in Regina. It was called Construction Careers Regina in 1998. When they were building this fantastic building, they were able to attract a lot of individuals. Good support from all of our partners. We've always maintained that we don't own them, the industry owns it. So essentially how they work is there's a program manager, and there's a job coach, and there's administrative help. The program manager will go out, find that opportunity, find the work in the construction. At the time it was fairly easy because it was right beside. They're building the First Nation University of Canada. Now what's innovative and neat about this particular program is the job coach. As you come through the door as an interested worker, you will sit with that job coach who will work with you. If it's a guy like me, he's going to have to start back at ground zero because I'm not sure which end of the hammer to hold. However, a lot of our people had some work history. They've worked around a little bit. They just needed to kind of put it all together. They may have needed a safety training. They may need some boots. They may need to get actually to the job site. Fair enough. That's what they did. That's how they worked with them. Now, another point is that in 1998, we started with, I believe, 3 people that were working at the Regina Center. And I think one of them is still here with us today. I see some nodding over there and kind of hiding down in the corners. But last year, they always get together in the fall, and I believe there was well over 30 people that attended. The numbers of people and the numbers of opportunities that the Regina one placed, it was such a good model. The Construction Association of Saskatchewan at that time, Manly, McLaughlin, he moved out to BC, and he liked that idea so much that he put one out there in Cowichan in the Lower Mainland, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. However, it continued to be successful. So after that, they moved one to Saskatoon, and that was in 2000, I believe. And then it moved another one to Prince Albert in 2003. Those were moving along very well, and the targets we were posed to reach, I think we did a lot of them in one quarter, and we were able to go forward with it. In 2007 and 2008, we added four more locations, one in LaRange, Yorkton, Meadow Lake, and North Battleford. So essentially now what we do is SIT as a college in the province. We have a main campus in Saskatoon, main campus in Regina, good campus in Prince Albert as well. And then we're responsible for maintaining and operating the 7 trade centers throughout the province. We've had great success with it. And just to walk you through a little bit more of the Joint Training Committee, we also have an aircraft maintenance engineer program. I'll throw in a little plug for that we have at this airport in Saskatoon. All those, the 9 graduates that graduated last Wednesday started work on Monday, and we're very pleased to have that one as our flagship as well. So how they work, as I sort of indicated, no one really owns the centers. The committee decides it. But when we came up with this Joint Training Committee, and I'll speak a little bit about that, the Joint Training Committee is to indenture, train, and track First Nation apprentices living in Saskatchewan. In partnership with the Apprenticeship Commission, it works actively to promote the value of apprenticeship, and since 1998, we have produced numerous journey persons in the carpentry trade. It, in a sense, acts like an employer, which allows apprentices mobility within the industry while continuing to be a registered apprentice in the province of Saskatchewan. Unique is the connection with SIT's 7 trades and industrial career centers, and the staff work closely with SIT to establish the relationships with industry in order to find suitable employment. In the upcoming training year at SIT, the Joint Training Commission expects to populate a newly built provincial database as well to assist in the monitoring, recording, trade time, and tracking our apprentices for each level of technical training. Our database will enhance our ability to work closely with the SATCC to coordinate the training requirements for apprenticeships. We look forward to expanding the office of the Joint Training Commission with the addition of 2 field consultants. The role of the field consultant will be to travel throughout the province, working closely with our apprenticeships, as well as seeking new apprentices working in the construction industry. That being said, we've had some amazing success over the last 12 years. Career Center model is essentially, what you do is work first, train later. Understand that client, and the job coach is so crucial for our career centers. I can't speak highly enough of it. The model that we used for the career centers, we're now looking at all of our other programming within SIT to provide that support for the worker, for the apprentice when he or she is going through it. And they also is a very nice place to land if they need to. Partners, we have great partners. The Training Commission, Joe Black and your crew have been fantastic to work with. Construction associations, the provincial government through their CAN-SAS offices have been great. And they come from industry, organizations, government, business, and it's been fantastic so far. Career centers, they do provide that glue that strengthens the effectiveness of our trade and industrial program that we have at SIT. Centers support our T&I graduates all over in PA. There's a listing of where they are. And our mission really is to develop the skills and provide an opportunity for individuals to establish careers in construction and other industries by providing the links to the employment. Goals and objectives is provide the assessment, the mentoring, career advising, and planning to the new participants. They do provide the employment opportunities as well. If someone comes in and gets assessed and already has those skills and or just needs a little push forward, they can. The model that we had, I indicated that was used in BC, in Cowichan and the Lower Mainland. And just recently, 6 colleges from Alberta came over to visit SIT and find out a little bit more about it. How did the concept start? Where do we have to go to get it? And it was an amazing event. I see, through the emails, all the CCs, I get CC'd on them, and I see all these college presidents. So I thought, well, I better go, make an appearance, talk to these guys. And as I'll pick on these guys over here again, from our career centers, they were there. And they went through an amazing presentation. And then all of a sudden, they started laying out some of the most wonderful statistics that I could ever come up with. My eyes were wide open. I did know what was going on, obviously, just not to the extent of how much. Since all of our 7 trade centers combined, since the inception of the CCR in Regina, The number of jobs that have been produced have been 12,839, and that's as of March 31st, 2012. It's remarkable. New participants in our projects have risen to 16,908. Currently, the ones that are indentured to the SIT Joint Training Committee is 240, and we have participants indentured in a contract or a business at 78. They're very passionate about yeah, thank you. So with that in mind, I think I was only supposed to take about 15 minutes. I do, those of you who do know me know I tend to kind of ramble because I get quite excited about when we can talk about SIT and the wonderful things we do for the province of Saskatchewan. Just to finish off the slideshow, they do provide that client-centered approach that's in the middle. And you know, you're looking at skills, you're looking at work. What else can we do to provide a centered individual? Some of the safety services and some of the links that we have there as well. I do find it interesting because it's a lot of our people, they just need a grade, not so much a grade 12, but they do need a license. And we provide that driver training as well. They have a grade 12, and if they have a driver's license and they're interested in the trade, it's the land of opportunities in Saskatchewan these days. We have those are our locations. We do have a Saskatchewan mandate that we have at SIT. However, we do have some ability to go beyond borders as well. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. I know we were supposed to give sort of a one-hitter, but I think the individual said it here who opened the conference today, as apprenticeship is a way towards the future, and we do believe in that at SIT as well. So thank you to the conference organizers, to CAF for allowing me to be here. It's going to be a great few-day conference. I wish I could stick around, but I got to make my way back up to Saskatoon. But enjoy your time in Saskatchewan and in Regina. It's a wonderful city, wonderful province. And again, thank you for allowing me to speak.
Randell, thank you very much for your very interesting presentation on SIT and in particular on the innovative career centers. Now I'd like to call on Bob Guthrie to provide us with his thoughts on apprenticeship success strategies. Bob?
Thank you. Welcome delegates and special guests. I've been asked to speak about one of the conference themes, which is engagement. However, I found that these themes don't exist in isolation, and so in fact there's aspects of innovation and in some sense diversity too. But I'm going to focus on engagement with a new initiative in Ontario. That is the Ontario College of Trades. As far as we know, it's the first of its kind. It's a professional regulatory college for all skilled trades. We don't know of any other case, certainly in Canada, North America. We presume that it is unique. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing, I guess where we come from, what some of our objectives are, maybe some of the challenges are, by way of speaking to this new form or new level of engagement. So, by way of introduction, the college is going to regulate people practicing in the skilled trades and their employers. This is something that's different. It's going to regulate both the practitioner and the employer. In the skilled trades, it's going to put skilled trades, we think, on an equal footing with other respected professions. It's going to promote skilled trades careers to young people. We've heard about that today. Of course, we all recognize the importance of that. We think the college represents an opportunity to do that with some sort of new vigor and take it, I guess, to a bit higher level. We're going to set training and certification standards. Of course, that isn't new. That's what all of the apprenticeship authorities do right now, but that will be part of the work of the college. The college, we think, and we hope, will instill public confidence in skilled trades practitioners, their employers. It's going to have a public interest, a public protection function. There will be a registry of skilled trades persons and their employers. It's going to give the skilled trades ownership of the decisions that are critical to their practices and their businesses. We think it's going to take that ownership again to a little further. That's been the general direction in Canada for some years now, is to engage industry employers and employees and their representative organizations more fully in apprenticeship. We think this represents the next logical step. The college will be responsible for some of the ordinary functions, I guess, of any regulatory college or apprenticeship authority, such as issuing certificates of apprenticeship or certificates of qualification as they're referred to in Ontario, otherwise known as journeyperson certificates. It will, since it's going to be membership-based, issue statements of membership to its members. Beginning next year, the college will be the authority that participates with other jurisdictions on the Canadian Council of Directors of Apprenticeship. There are a number of aspects of the college that we think are unique. It is the first of its kind, as I said. It's membership-based. It's going to be driven by the industry it represents. The college will be a regulatory body with a promotional mandate. Again, that's somewhat unusual. I guess that's not entirely unique, but a lot of regulatory colleges have a more traditional, shall we say, regulatory function and don't have a promotional responsibility. The College of Trades certainly does in Ontario. It's going to regulate over 150 professions. This is a first. The model that exists for regulatory colleges is for one profession. I'm not aware of any regulatory college that regulates more than one profession. We're going to try to regulate 150 professions, so it will be a challenge. We're going to regulate, as I said, the practitioner, the tradesperson, and the employer. And we're going to manage a program that will establish ratios of journeypersons to apprentices, and make a determination as to whether a trade should be compulsory or not. Now, that's not to say that the college will make that determination, but it's going to essentially manage a process that will allow that determination to be made. I think some of you will know that that these can be difficult issues. It's been a long time since any trade was made compulsory anywhere in Canada that I'm aware of. So there's been a certain inertia. There is now in Ontario an opportunity to have that question addressed. As again, the college won't make the decision, but there's a process in place now when proponents of making a trade compulsory can bring an application forward. And of course, if people are opposed to that, they will have an opportunity through that process to identify, register their objections, make their arguments as compellingly as they can, and ultimately a decision will be made. So those are some of the unique aspects of the College of Trades. On the subject of engagement, we certainly are doing whatever we can to hear from members of the public and particularly the people who will be impacted, our future members, employers, and skilled tradespersons. We're consulting on a host of issues right now, such as standards. That's an ongoing process. We're talking about ratios. We're managing a process to review ratios. In fact, that is now a requirement that every 4 years in Ontario, the ratio of journeypersons to apprentices will be reviewed for those trades which have apprentices. By the way, of the 150 apprenticeship trades in Ontario, only about 30 of them have a prescribed ratio. The membership, we think, and the public register, which will be a feature of membership, as it is with every regulatory college, will be a tool or a mechanism to build consumer confidence. Everybody who is a member of the college will can be identified through a public register, and that register will indicate who they are, what the status of their membership is, whether they're a member in good standing or not. And it will allow consumers, for instance, or potential employers to essentially check the status of an individual who they might be considering to hire or might be considering to engage to do some work for them. In this model, we think trades workers and their employers are really no longer spectators. They really have their hand on the wheel here. They're basically making the decisions through the college and the governance structure that supports the college, making the decisions that affect them most critically. Here's a little bit about the governance structure. It is multi-level. It's fairly extensive. It has a board of governors. I've actually so far today met 3 members of the board of governors of the Ontario College and Trades at the conference, including Joy McKinnon. There's Pat Blackwood and Dave Cease are also on the board of the college, whom you'll be familiar with through their work with the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. There's a 21-member board. It's essentially consists of representatives from 4 divisions: construction, motive power, industrial, and service. There is balanced employer and employee representation in those 4 divisions, and there is representation from both the unionized and non-unionized sector. There are 5 public interest members. That is, if we include the colleges of Ontario as a public interest, perhaps it's a more specific interest, but 4 members then represent a general public interest. Joy sits on the board of the College of Trades as a representative of the colleges of Ontario. So the next level of governance is divisional boards. These are smaller. There are 4 individuals. Again, they're balanced between employer and employee representatives, and they are chaired by a member of the College of Trades. And then beyond that, there are trade boards. Not every trade has its own trade board. We're looking at some trades which are very small, where it might make sense to combine trade boards, or they may be relatively inactive, and we may not have the requirement for a specific trade board, in which case trade-specific issues would essentially roll up to the divisional board. So that's a little bit about the structure of the organization. OCOD, as we call it, Ontario College of Trades, will be a membership-based organization. There will be classes of membership. This has been determined as a result of a consultation. We still have to have a regulation to put this in place. But the classes that are proposed are journeyperson, apprentice, tradesperson, and employers, or sometimes called employer sponsors. Membership fees will fund the operations, just as with every other regulatory college. It will be self-financing. That there is some consultation underway right now with respect to what those membership fees should be. But as you can imagine, that is engaging people in the discussion, in the debate, because in the past, not having had a structure like this, there was no requirement for membership in an organization and the payment of membership fees. So this itself is a kind of a powerful motivation for engagement with our stakeholders. We are proposing fees, membership fees, in the range of $50 to $200 per year for individuals, probably at the lower end of that for apprentices, and the mid-range of that likely for journeypersons, and employers, depending on the size, might be at the upper end of that range. We think that determination is going to be made in the next couple of months. So that's some of the ways that we're engaging people right now in Ontario with respect to the College of Trades. We think there are some significant benefits. I think, personally, that this is the next logical step, I guess, in the evolution of skilled trades. It's what attracted me to the opportunity. I had been, working in apprenticeship in Saskatchewan, and was aware of this opportunity, was interested in it, began a conversation with some people in Ontario who were moving in this direction, was ultimately sort of drawn into that discussion more fully, became quite enthusiastic about the possibility, and was appointed to this position. But it represents, I think, the next step, a regulatory college for the skilled trades. We think that there are significant benefits. We've identified those for employers, for journeypersons, apprentices, and so on. Here are some of the things in point form. We won't take too much time because we're not trying to sell a membership to you here today, but just to say to you, there are benefits of membership, and we will be basically going out and promoting that so-called value proposition very aggressively in Ontario in the next few months. So it includes things like voice and ownership, protection. We expect there will be a stronger ability and will to enforce the standards in Ontario through the College of Trades. We think that a good skilled trades training system, trades training and certification system, delivers people with the right skills to employers. That increases the productivity of those businesses. And of course, promoting skilled trades careers to young people generally will give us an opportunity to recruit and attract capable young people into skilled trades. We've already heard about that today. With respect to journeypersons, a lot of the same benefits around ownership and voice and so on. There is, we think, enhanced status to be able to say that you're a member in good standing of your professional regulatory association. Again, it puts you on an equal footing with people in other respected occupations. There's a protection. It levels the playing field so that we think there's ability through this for people who are playing by the rules, who have met all the requirements, in fact are members in good standing, to be able to put themselves forward and compete more effectively from the what are sometimes called the curbsiders. We think in the future there will be opportunities through a large membership-based organization to offer discounts or affinity programs. We're talking about things like continuing professional development, but those, frankly, are future benefits. We're not in the position to offer those yet. Apprentices, similar benefits, similar elements of value proposition for apprentices. For the public, I think there's going to be a new level of confidence in skilled trades. Any member of the public through our website will be able to identify whether a prospective employer or contractor or individual tradesperson is a member in good standing of the college. We think that offers a certain level of protection to the public. We think it will build confidence ultimately then in people who are working in skilled trades. And I think we will, for the public, be able to offer opportunity because of a strong promotional mandate for skilled trades careers. We think we will be able to contribute to, with all the other partners, getting the message out about the great opportunities in skilled trades careers for young people or people who are looking at changes in their careers. So what's ahead? We're in the midst of ratio reviews. They have begun right now. The college is in a developmental or formative stage. It has not actually opened its doors, as we say. We have not begun enrolling members yet, but we have assumed responsibility for developing the standards and so on for the 150 occupations. We're conducting ratio reviews. This is done through an adjudicative process where panelists invite submissions from stakeholders who make the case, and ultimately the panel makes a determination as to what the ratio of apprentices to journey persons should be. We're doing a lot of work around developing regulations and bylaws that will in fact put the pieces in place for us to kind of open our doors and get down to business very soon. So Go Live is scheduled for January 1st, 2013, and what we mean by Go Live essentially is open the doors, begin enrolling members, and providing services to those members. So that's a little bit about the College of Trades. I know that even a few years ago when this idea was born, so to speak, I heard about it in Saskatchewan. I was interested in it. I didn't know a great deal about it. I had heard about it from time to time in the intervening years. It is moving forward, and there will be an opportunity, I think, in the questions that follow here, if you have some specific questions about that. In the meantime, or subsequent to this conference, if you want to know more about the College of Trades, I'd invite you to visit our website and have a look. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bob, for that very informative update on the Ontario College of Trades and for stressing the importance and the critical nature of stakeholder engagement. As a board member, and I know there's a few of my colleagues in the room, that is likely the most critical aspect of the rollout of this important new venture in Ontario. I'd now like to call on Don Wright to join us at the podium and share his thoughts on apprenticeship success strategies. Don?
Thanks, Joy. And as Joy mentioned, this is a bit of a homecoming for me. I was raised in Saskatoon. One of our children was born in Saskatoon, and two of our children were born in Regina, so it's nice to be back home. I'll start out by telling you a little bit about BCIT. Depending on how you count student FTEs, we're the second or third largest post-secondary institution in British Columbia. We have approximately 17,000 full-time students and 31,000 part-time students. And we are by far the largest provider of skilled trades training in the province. Skilled trades training accounts for approximately 25% of our programming. The other 75% is a broad array of programs in business, engineering, health sciences, computing science, and many others. Our credentials range from certificates to diplomas to bachelor degrees and master's degrees. All of our programs share a common BCIT model of education. Two key characteristics. First, we remain very connected to the employer community and ask them to tell us what skills, what knowledge, what work habits, and behaviors they want to see in our graduates. And the second is that we emphasize the importance of learning by doing, and that complements and deepens the theoretical learning taught in the classroom. We like to say you'll never hear a BCIT grad say, but this is my first day on the job. And that's because the emphasis on hands-on application in our education model. I've been asked to talk about innovation. I'm going to define innovation slightly differently than what you may have been thinking. I'm going to argue that the ultimate innovation is what we choose to value. Because ultimately, I don't believe we are going to adequately deal with our skilled trade shortages, and we're not going to adequately deal with our productivity problem in this country unless we fundamentally change how we think about and how we value different types of human capital. I'm going to come at this argument a little indirectly. It may seem a little bit of an indulgence on my part, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about my family history. This will let you know a little bit about where I come from personally, and it also leads to my main point. First of all, I want to talk about my grandfather, Sam Wright. He has a cool story. He left Sheffield, England as a young man with literally not much more than his box of tools and his one textbook on construction. He came to Western Canada and ended up as the president of a company called Smith Brothers and Wilson, which at the time was one of the largest general contractors in Western Canada. Some of the buildings he managed the construction of were the original buildings at the University of Saskatchewan, the Besborough Hotel in Saskatoon, and tomorrow night, those of you that go to the reception at the Hotel Saskatchewan, my grandfather managed that construction project back in 1926, so I think that's kind of cool. Next, I just want to talk about my father, Cliff Wright. He went into the construction business as well. He took the Saskatchewan assets of Smith Brothers and Wilson and started a Saskatchewan-based company called Wright Construction. He also, along the way, was the mayor of Saskatoon for 12 years, was a treaty commissioner who brokered the largest land claim settlement in Saskatchewan history, and engaged in many other forms of public service. And then finally, there's a picture of my brother Lorne and my son Duncan that was taken about 25 years ago. They're both moved on a little bit in age. My brother Lorne took over Wright Construction and has built it into the largest Saskatchewan-based construction company. It does projects from Thunder Bay to Nanaimo. Now, what's the point of this trip through my family history? Well, the point is that my grandfather, my father, and my brother had or have their journeyman's papers as carpenters. In my brother's case, it came after he graduated from university with a business degree. My father told him that the best way to understand the construction business was to start out by learning how buildings are constructed from the ground up. So you might say for Lorne, his apprenticeship was his graduate school. Now, the half joke in our family is that I'm the family screw-up. That I couldn't manage to get an apprenticeship, so I went somewhere else and got a doctorate. Your laughter tells me that you share our joke, and I want to come back to that in a moment. But first, I want to talk briefly about productivity. To put it bluntly, Canada's productivity performance over the past 30 years has been terrible. 30 years ago, Canada's level of productivity was the 5th highest in the world. By 2009, it had fallen to 15th. Over the past 30 years, Canada has had one of the worst productivity performances in the developed economies. Now, there are multiple reasons for this weak productivity performance, and I don't have time today to examine all those reasons. I want to talk about one that is focused directly on what we're talking about here today. It concerns how we think about and how we value different types of human capital. I do believe that a significant part of Canada's productivity problem rests on some misdirected assumptions about what is to be the most valued types of human capital. Over the past 40 years or so, there has been a strong current that has devalued in relative terms learning by doing versus learning by theory only, practical education versus academic education, making things, building things, and fixing things versus talking about things, and the contributions of the broad majority of workers versus the contributions of the so-called best and brightest. I bring you back to the Wright family joke. Isn't the reason we laugh at that because implicitly there is a notion that a PhD from Harvard is more valuable than a journeyman's papers as a carpenter? Well, I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong morally, I think it's wrong socially, and I think it's wrong economically. And while I think I've done okay in life, I would argue that my grandfather, my father, and my brother have actually created more wealth for Canada than I have. And I think the fact that they had their apprenticeship training was a key part of their ability to do that. I think we need to learn lessons from jurisdictions such as Germany. The German economy has done remarkably well in spite of being at the center of an economically stressed Europe. In Germany, craft is valued. Making things and fixing things are valued. Apprenticeship is more broadly defined and broadly understood to be an integral part of the education and career development of the workforce. Approximately 2/3 of German youth are engaged in some kind of apprenticeship program. German employers are committed to training. Comparisons between German and Canadian performance on key dimensions shows a marked discrepancy. In 2010, Canada's teenage unemployment rate was 69% higher than Germany's. The average German worker produced 22% more per hour worked than the average Canadian worker. The average hourly wage in Canadian manufacturing was 40% higher than the average hourly wage in Canadian manufacturing. I argue that there is a connection between Germany's different approach to developing human capital and its superior performance. Young people's transitions from the education system generally happen much more seamlessly than it does in Canada. The typical German worker is more productive because he or she has more human capital than his or her Canadian counterpart. And a high productivity economy can afford to pay high wages. I'm not arguing that we should copy German approaches across the board. Every jurisdiction needs to develop the policies, structures, and norms that make sense to its particular circumstances. But I do argue there are important lessons here. In particular, Canadian society has to attach a greater value to practical education and employment-based training. I need to emphasize that I'm not echoing here the oft-repeated notion that trades have to be made more attractive to young people. My reading of the evidence, based largely on my experience in British Columbia, is that there's no shortage of young people that want to seek a career in the skilled trades. What there is a shortage of pathways into the trades, for the simple reason that not enough employers are willing to sponsor apprentices. Now, I don't blame employers for that. They have their businesses to run and keep in the black, and they have to make the most rational decisions for their individual businesses. But what is required for society as a whole to decide that the right framework and set of incentives is put in place so that significantly more sponsorships are provided on an ongoing basis. To give you a flavor of what I'm talking about here, I'm going to leave you with some order of magnitude numbers. Canadian taxpayers currently devote approximately 2 to 4 times as much money educating a lawyer as they do educating a skilled trade person. In gross dollar terms, the difference is between $35,000 and $50,000 per person educated. Now, we are not reading in the newspaper daily stories about the acute shortages of lawyers. And in fact, if you do see any story about it, what you read is the difficulty that people graduating from law school are finding in getting articling positions. But we are reading daily about growing shortages in the skilled trades. So why the discrepancy in taxpayer investment? What if governments were to offer employers $35,000 to $50,000 for each apprentice they sponsored from first year through to certification? Do you suppose that might begin to reduce some of the shortages of skilled tradespeople? Just asking. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Don, for sharing your family history as a way to help us to focus on what we value to support and promote apprenticeship, and Canada in doing so. That now concludes our panel presentations, and I'd like to open the floor for questions to our panelists. There's microphones throughout the room on the floor. Please use them so the panelists can hear you well. And while you're formulating your questions and moving to the microphones, I'll start us off by asking a question to all 3 members of our panel. Gentlemen, what are some of the barriers to apprenticeship strategies that you have described? What, if anything, can apprenticeship stakeholders do to address these barriers? Who'd like to go first? I think there's a mic there for you, Bob.
On? Oh, now it's on. Okay. I mean, I'm focusing on engagement, and I think that the single biggest barrier to engagement is the status quo, or what I might describe as apathy. What I found in Ontario in the few months I've been there is that the stakeholders become very engaged when you innovate, when you change something, and that's what we're proposing to do in Ontario. We're trying to take skilled trades and the promotion and regulation of skilled trades, the status of skilled trades to the next level, and that has been very engaging. So this is what I alluded to at the beginning when I said that these themes are not isolated. So for engagement, I think the answer in part is innovation. That can be described very broadly, of course, but when you try to change something, the stakeholders do engage. It's not easy, but it begins with a conversation and a proposal to change something. So I would suggest that if we want to engage more fully, we should innovate more deeply.
Thank you, Bob. Randell, Don?
Well, is that coming through? As you got from my remarks, I think the fundamental barrier is that the economic equation for the employers to sponsor apprenticeship just isn't compelling enough. And I know there's studies that have been done that show that actually the return on investment is very good. But the reality is not enough employers are doing it. And I think they know their business better than anybody else. And if they're choosing not to do it, it's because they're making a calculation that in terms of determining whether they're going to build their human capital or buy their human capital, it makes more sense for them to just offer a couple of bucks more an hour and take somebody else's skilled trade person away from them. One individual employer can do that, but the whole industry can't. And so we need to find ways to make the economic equation work better for the employers. And I think there's two things that I think we should look at. One is I do think government has a role to play in providing better support for the investment in skilled trades, and I think they should be looking at more generous tax incentives for employers. And the second thing is I think that administratively apprenticeship systems can be quite daunting to the individual employer, and I think the models that have industry organizations, whether they be the joint management board approaches that you see in some of the construction industries or some of the types of models that you see down in Australia, where an organization takes on the responsibility for navigating apprentices through the apprenticeship system would be a way to get more uptake.
Randell?
I'd have to agree with my two colleagues here at the podiums. We have another barrier that we face in our institution, and it's specific to the First Nation folks. How do we better engage some of the companies that are out there to take a chance on one of our individual students to grab that? Mentioning some of the statistics here, we've done a great job, but there's more to do. Is it breaking down some of those initial barriers that we can help with? Is there somewhere we can go into? I think that adds into what we've been saying over the last little while. Specifically, some of the individual gentlemen who made the comments beginning of the conference, I think those are some of the ways we can address those barriers. Yes, there's going to be some incentives we have to come up with, or the government's going to have to take some action in order to increase those opportunities for the apprenticeship seats and spots and the certification part of it.
Thank you. See some questions from the floor over here. Maybe you could just say who you are and where you're from.
No? Yes.
Here we are.
Hi, I'm Diane Cahoon from the Tourism Education Council, and I actually have a question, a recruitment question, that I'd like to sort of put forward to everyone. We face a demographic challenge even with our First Nations sort of higher than average fertility in Saskatchewan. We have 164,710 students in school this year from kindergarten to grade 12. And they're coming out into a labor market. Listen to all the big numbers we've had today, but 14,000 people graduating each year into an economy that's going to require 20,000 people. So what are the other pools that we can recruit from in order to engage great apprentices?
Well, I guess I can begin by saying that young people is an important source of new entrants to apprenticeship, but they're not the only source. I think as industry evolves and changes, the skill sets that the people who work in those industries need change, and I think there's a great opportunity for people to change, retool, so to speak, and that is an important new source of entrance to apprenticeship. So in addition to the population, the young people that are coming up there, I think there's an opportunity to bring people from other industry when they become essentially surplus to the needs of those industries. Canada has traditionally invited a lot of people to come here from other parts of the world, and I think that there's now a new federal initiative to set up a stream for skilled tradespeople, so there's an opportunity, I think, to attract people with at least the beginning of some skilled trades training and experience through immigration. So I don't think there's one solution. I would suggest that there's going to have to be several solutions. Ultimately, investment by employers in technology and in training is going to increase the productivity, and that tends to have the effect, I think, ultimately of requiring or reducing the sort of the amount of labor that you require at the bulk level, I suppose. So I think there's several avenues that employers and governments should be looking at to source the people we need to meet the demand in the skilled trades.
I have to agree with Bob on that one. I've known Bob for years now, and I think we discussed some of those points years ago when we were trying to find out how can we increase the number of apprenticeships in the province of Saskatchewan. And you're right, there is a lot of people that will go over to other parts of the world and recruit. That adds in a different issue because then now the certification and the skills that have to be assessed, and then there's another whole process for that as well. I do think there's other pools that we can access, other pools that we can reach into and tap into, some cross-training. I do like to mention a point that Dawn made, is that some of the individuals we see that have degrees are now finding out that they'd like to go back and get an apprenticeship course underneath their belts to take on something else, and I think it's fascinating that he shared a story with us, because my dad was an iron worker, and he built the skyscrapers in New York after the Second World War. When he made his way back to Saskatchewan, then he went into College of Engineering, so his was a little bit different, but they all started off as trades workers, and I think you can build upon some of their experiences and their life history of how you access those different pools.
I would just echo what was said previously. It's really a combination of all of the above. But I'd just like to make two comments. One is that I strongly believe that we need to look to immigration, but we need to look to it only after we are absolutely convinced that we've given Canadians the full opportunity to get properly skilled and employed in the industries. I think it is a terrible thing for us to give up on Canadian population and go and recruit abroad when we know there's lots of young people that are looking for good, sustaining careers. And so that's one thing I'd like to emphasize. The second thing I would like to emphasize. The second thing I'd like to emphasize is what Bob said, is the productivity has to be a key part of the solution. We know we're going to need to become more productive to sustain our standard of living, and also to look after people like me that are going to be retiring out pretty soon and need to be looked after in their old age. But the key to productivity is training. We have to invest in the workers so they can be productive.
Thank you, panelists. Another question down in front here.
Yes, Keith Poisson, CAW from the West Coast. We sit here and we talk a lot about apprenticeships, and we all agree with them. One of the most names that is brought up is government. Probably the worst poachers of skilled trades in the country. And I'm talking of all three levels. Not all of them are there, but most of them don't have any apprentices. I find that pretty deplorable, considering they're the largest employer in Canada. I think they should be more of a statement and a question, I suspect. I think that they need to give us some guidance by doing what needs to be done here. Open up their pockets to apprenticeships and allow all our young Canadians a decent opportunity at a chance to a good trade. Your comments would be very much appreciated.
Thanks, Keith. Panelists?
Yeah, sure. I'll agree with you, and then I'll put my hair shirt on. First of all, I agree with you. And actually, just last week, I was in the minister's office in British Columbia talking about the skills challenge, and he was saying, look to government actually to do some action on that. I also know that the leader of the official opposition in British Columbia has been talking a lot about the skills agenda, and that's, I think, something that's going to be on their agenda should they be elected a year from now. But here's my hair shirt time. We're the biggest provider of trades training in British Columbia. Currently, we don't have any apprentices in our maintenance facility at BCIT, and it's a little embarrassing. We're planning to do something about it, but absolutely, the public sector is a big employer of skilled trades. They need to be part of the solution as well, too.
Robert Randell?
Well, I'm aware that there's, the beginnings of some movement. I think governments have behaved essentially like other large employers, and for the past few decades, and they've seen themselves as employers of choice, and they could therefore essentially afford to go out and source their skilled tradespeople from the private sector, through the private sector, or smaller companies in some cases. And frankly, they've been able to afford to do that up till now. They, I think, have been employers of choice. But those conditions aren't going to exist for much longer. In fact, I don't think they exist now, and I think that governments have a harder time to making the claim that they are the employers of choice. Big companies are in some respects, but there's so much opportunity, there is so much demand that they simply will not be able to, whether it's government or another large employer that doesn't train, they will not be able to continue to operate that way. It's unfortunate that it's taken the dynamics in the labor market to change that equation, but it is changing fundamentally, and I think in the future government and other companies that have not traditionally trained will, simply because they must.
I have to agree with the friends up here. One step further to agree with your comment is that in Saskatchewan, if you're not from Saskatchewan, there's a number of crown corporations that are operated out of actually Regina. I happen to sit on one of the bigger Crown Corporation boards, and when we take a look of what the next generation, how are we going to plan for those people that are leaving within the next 4 to 5 years, or however many years that might be, they're taking with them the people that retire are taking with them 35 years of experience plus. How do we bring in some new people, young people into those apprenticeship jobs if they are? And a lot of them have it, so we need to work at that level as well. Not just the government, not just the province, but I think with the Crown corporations, and because they're huge employers of people throughout our province. So that's one step we need to take.
Thank you, panelists. Can I take another question from down in front? I know you've been waiting for a few minutes.
Yeah, George Smith with the IBW Local 353. I'd like to ask all three speakers what we're doing nationally to recognize the skill set and the portability of our skills from province to province as we bring them in. Like, we live in hotspots all over Canada where it's feast and famine with the work situation, and when a young apprentice serves his first term and achieves his basic training, and no matter what trade it is, and brings it to another province, are we doing anything at all levels, employment levels, the college levels, and the people levels, to recognize these skill sets that they're bringing from province to province? Or is it start from ground zero again? Because I know in Ontario we sometimes have a challenge when an apprentice comes from another province. We recognize them, and for some reason their hours aren't counted, or for some reason there's a challenge there. Are we doing anything right across the board to recognize these skill sets as they take them from province to province?
I'll start off by deferring to my friends. That right now our focus is for our Saskatchewan folks that we're training up. We haven't I know that is an issue, but I'd like to hear these guys' more perspective than mine. We're worried about the ones in Saskatchewan so far, so I know there is an issue, so I'd like to hear where that comes.
Well, there's pretty good mobility for people who are certified as journey persons through the Red Seal program. I think you'll all be familiar with that, the people at this conference. However, not every trade is a Red Seal trade. In addition to the mobility that the Red Seal certification provides, or the Red Seal endorsement provides, there's new rules in Canada under the Agreement Internal Trade that says essentially if you're recognized as a qualified practitioner in one province or territory, then you must be accepted and recognized in the others. So that deals with people who are already certified and trained. I think your question may have been trying to get at apprentices. What's the status of apprentices? And the story there is it's different, and it's more difficult. I think the federal government did a labor force survey, apprenticeship survey recently, and they indicated that, in fact, there isn't maybe as much mobility among apprentices as we might have expected. There is some. I was a little surprised at the level of mobility. I guess the point is there are some apprentices who move, and we're aware that I'm aware from my having worked in a couple of different jurisdictions that it isn't a smooth or a seamless process. Every province and territory, as you know, has its own system, has its own sort of administration regulations, and I'm sure some provinces deal with it more effectively than others. I think a principle that should be established is that individuals should get credit for the experience and the training that they have wherever it is, and that when someone shows up, at apprenticeship's doorstep anywhere in Canada, there should be a good assessment process and a recognition or a credit process, and they should be able to move forward from that point. Now, having said that, I can't speak with any authority as to how effectively those systems work in the 13 jurisdictions in Canada. I have some familiarity with a couple, but based on that, I can't make any generalizations. So I think yes, it's a problem, it's an issue. I think there's a recognition that that's an increasing issue, and it will get more attention in the future, but there will be no national solution because apprenticeship just doesn't work that way in Canada. It's going to be a problem that's going to be solved by 13 jurisdictions, and to the extent that they recognize it and get to work, I think we will see improvements. It will take some time, however.
Well, I'm going to do an even bigger punt than Randell did. I see Kevin Evans at the microphone there, and I'm going to ask him to share what he knows about that from BC's jurisdiction.
Nice punt, Don. I would just elaborate on Bob's point. I think the figure, actually, the research suggested was about 3% of apprentices are actually mobile during their apprenticeship. So I think we have to take a look at the issue in some scope. It's clear from the employer community and from labor that there is a desire, and the CCDA, the Canadian Council of Directors of Apprenticeship, heard this in a National Stakeholders Forum in March, that there needs to be increased harmonization between the jurisdictions of the curriculum. And through the Red Seal program, we are trying to promote that through the introduction of interprovincial guides. But it is ultimately a jurisdictional responsibility, and it's up to the jurisdictions as to their willingness to harmonize or not. I would say that there is a willingness, I think, among my counterparts in other provinces to look at greater harmonization, and certainly that's part of the dialogue that's occurring now at the CCDA.
Thank you for your question. Kevin, over to you for your question.
Well, thanks, Joy. I'm Kevin Evans. I'm with the BC Industry Training Authority. And Bob, I was really quite taken by your juxtaposition of two of the themes of this conference, innovation and engagement. And you said that if we want to engage more, we have to innovate more. And I've been watching with great interest from the West Coast the firestorm that's building in Ontario as you try to innovate with the College of Trades. And it makes me wonder two things, and I'd like the panel's reflection on this. Number one, what is it about apprenticeship that so very quickly generates such heat of debate and discussion that for the timid might dampen the enthusiasm to innovate? And secondly, what do we as the apprenticeship community need to do to lower the temperature of the dialogue so we can have a reasoned discussion and move forward into the 21st century?
Well, maybe I'll begin to try to respond to that. The people in this system are passionate about it. The incoming chair of the CCDA, Dan Mills, described a little exercise he conducts when he meets people across the country, or he's from New Brunswick. If in the course of the conversation they indicate that they're a journey person, he asks them if they're carrying their certificate, their journey person certificate, and he said pretty much inevitably they pull out their wallet and show it to them. It tells you something about how much pride they have, how strongly they feel about this. People have very strong feelings about apprenticeship, the people who are part of this system, whether they're employers or whether they're skilled tradespeople. So yes, there's a lot of passion, and passion will often generate some heat, and it can raise the temperature. The way, I think, to kind of move past that, I mean, that's an important dynamic, I think, in the discussion. The way to move past it, I think, is to try to pull the conversation up to a little bit higher level where we talk about what we're trying to achieve. And it's not usually hard to get agreement between employers and employees, between unions and employer associations, if you talk about the objectives that we're aiming for at a high enough level, because really there is common cause there, common interest. What we may disagree about quite passionately sometimes is how to get there, or what the particular tactics should be at this time or in this place. I think we're going to inevitably have that. Apprenticeship's been around for a long time. It's a complicated system. There are some deeply vested interests in the way things are done now. In Ontario, one of the goals, some of the language we've used it's been used there talks about modernizing the apprenticeship system or the skilled trade system, which is good. That sounds good. Everybody might agree on that. But what we find out when we drill a little deeper is that there is a complicated system. It's been built this way over decades and decades. It serves some aspects of the way it is serves some interests very well, and they are quite resistant to changing that. So I think there's no way to avoid the controversy or the heat, that we're going to have that passionate discussion, and at some point we're going to have to focus on what we're trying to achieve at a higher level and move forward, and in some cases move forward over the objections of some deeply vested interests. So I don't see an alternative to that if in fact we're going to move forward. We're not going to be able to achieve 100% consensus, and so we're going to have to move forward, I think, ultimately with what we're trying to achieve, the highest goals in mind, and over the objections in some cases of some vested interests.
You know what, I've seen that pride, and I've seen that effectiveness of an apprentice. I've been in rooms much larger than this where everyone is an apprentice, has gone through the apprenticeship way. And I think it has to start a little bit earlier in life. If your child, if your son or daughter, at around that grade 6 level, so that a grade 4 level, wherever that point is for these people, that is an option, that is an opportunity for our young people to go into, not just university. And I'm not here to bash university, because I was one of those guys too. I went to university for quite a long time, but when going through my high school, I never had that opportunity. Hey, do you want to? This is another avenue. This is another way you can do it. It was always, if you can't go to university, then you go this way. And I know my friend Bob McCullough, who's the outgoing president of SIAS. He'd agree with me, like this is something that we've been passionate about, and we're trying to drive that way of thinking for the last probably 5-6 years. It'll take time, but I think you can see it coming around the bend a little bit, and that's from more of a college perspective throughout the country. Sitting with the Association of Canadian Community Colleges last week at their national conference, this time it was centered on the World Congress of Polytechnics, and how can they play a role in this worldwide economy. And there's huge opportunities for us to do so. So I think it's getting there. It's just a matter of, when's it gonna come to the end? Good question.
Don, any thoughts?
I wish I truly understood it, Kevin, and I'll probably get myself into trouble, but I think it's fundamentally about different visions for the competitiveness of the Canadian economy. I think there is one vision that is a high productivity, high wage vision, and another vision that is a low labor cost vision. And I think that the clash between those two visions plays out in this forum. And I think that part of the problem is from an individual company's point of view, the most obviously controllable thing for that company are labor costs, and so they're going to tend to focus on how do I keep labor costs down. Somehow or other we need to get over that hump and say, but if we invest in the workforce and make it highly productive, you can be competitive and pay high wages. And I don't think we've actually figured out how to get the consensus to move to that high productivity, high wage vision of our future.
Thanks, panelists. We have time for just 2 more questions, so I'm going to take questions from the 2 people who've been patiently waiting at the microphones. Alan.
Alan Bruce with the International Union of Operating Engineers. I'd be remiss as a champion of the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum if I didn't add another answer to Kevin's question and say one way to continue to have a rational and respectful discussion on apprenticeship is to ensure that the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum exists after next year. So I'll throw that one in. My point is on the vision, future vision of apprenticeship and trades training as part of a greater economic strategy in Canada. A lot of our discussion is around short-term issues, short-term solutions, and I've been asking the question and not getting a lot of really good answers on where does the long-term vision lie? Who's responsible for the long-term vision? If you talk to organizations and employers, a long-term vision for a lot of construction contractors is 18 months out when the contract they're working on may be ending. I don't know if it's government, is it industry? I'd be interested in the panel's discussion on who looks at and who takes responsibility for incenting behaviors we need to have a strong workforce in the skilled trades 10, 15, and 20 years out. I'll listen to your comments. Thank you.
Well, I'll jump in. I mean, the easy answer is it's everybody's responsibility, and to some extent it is. But I think the ultimate leadership has to come from government. And the reason for that is unless government is able to put in place the right framework and the right incentives, I don't know how you get over this problem that from an individual employer's point of view, the economic equation for doing employment-based training just doesn't work in Canada at this point in time to the extent that it needs to if we're going to have a high productivity, high wage economy. So I think ultimately you are going to need government or governments saying, this is our vision of the future for the Canadian economy, and here's how we're going to get there, and here's the role that the various players have to play.
I might take a little different attack on that question. I think that ultimately it's going to be up to business and labor to tell the government what it requires, and when the government recognizes, what is expected of it, what is required of it, it steps into the role. But I mean, I haven't found government, this is my own personal view, to exercise a lot of vision or leadership until they've figured out which way the parade is going, and at that point they'll jump in front of it. So I think the onus is on employers and employees and their representative organizations to work together to articulate this to the extent they can. I understand that's not an easy ask, but fundamentally I think that until business and labor kind of come together with one common, strong, articulate, and compelling voice, that government will continue to sort of, wander the side streets. That's a personal opinion.
Thanks, Bob. Randell.
No real differing opinion other than I've been able to view and have a look at some of the labor market information from a number of different sector councils. And each one of those, or the packages that they produce, whether it's the Mining Industry Human Resource Sector Council, is one that's huge in Saskatchewan, and it's how are we going to increase those 18,000 jobs over the next 20 years. That needs to be everybody's concern. We need to worry about, like, at our college, at SciAS, we can put all of our seats into a mining-related program and still not face the needs. So we're going to have to get our heads around it, whether it be in a task force with a labor market task force that is already set up within Saskatchewan. Do we bring some of those things to light? Do we take that back to our leaders? I think that's what they're wanting to get out of it. I think that they're wanting to get a plan out of it. We need to be a little bit more forthcoming with some of that information, as not just in our regions, but throughout the whole area of the provincial boundaries. We have to also coordinate with some of our partners and neighboring communities too, so that we're not doing the same thing and we're poaching from the same people. But, yeah.
Thank you, panelists. And for our last question down in front, thank you for your patience.
Thanks. Luc Plante, I'm with the French Catholic School Board in Ottawa. My question is specifically for Mr. Guthrie. When you'll be establishing the fees for the College of Trades, have you taken into consideration the OYAP student who might become registered apprentices while they are in high school?
Well, I think the short answer to that is, at this point, no. I know there's been some consideration of it, so I shouldn't say no categorically. What I would say at this point is that the issue has been identified. There's no decision been made with respect to how OYAP students will, that's the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program students, will be affected by this. As of today, in fact, we've just closed a consultation with respect to fees, including fees for apprentices. And the next step for us now is to, sort of assess the results of that. I don't know whether there was any comment or representation from your organization or others with respect to this particular issue. Even if it weren't identified as part of our fee consultation, it's certainly been identified as an issue and will be, part of a discussion. There will be consideration. I think what I can say is that there would be some recognition that and that there's some special sensitivity perhaps for young people. I can't at this point say with any certainty what the outcome will be, what the decision will be, but it has been identified as an issue as part of our discussion.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your questions, and panelists, thank you for your insightful responses. We're nearing the end of our session, but before we conclude, I'd like to invite each of our panelists to take a minute or two and make a brief closing statement that reflects his perspective on apprenticeship success strategies. Randell?
I'm just going to continue from what I've been saying for a while now, and apprenticeship is a way. It definitely is a way going forward, where the future lies. When we take a look at a number of jobs, at the number of requirements that are out there that are in front of us, when we gather that information, we have to start looking at our apprenticeship, our trades, our skills, our workers that are here. We have to focus a lot of attention on that, and we need to increase our opportunities and our seats for our students, and we need to expand specifically as it relates to our trades and industrial programming.
Thank you, Randell. Bob?
Well, in terms of a success strategy, I think for the future, what we need to do is keep moving. There's a long history of apprenticeship, and certainly there's very strong traditions and attachments to the traditions in apprenticeship, and there are some things that are constant, some things that are proven that do work. We've probably all heard the expression, if it's not broke, don't fix it. In fact, apprenticeship is an interesting mixture. Some things are working very well. I think the foundations are good, but there are some things that need to be changed, that need to be adjusted, and I think that if we don't innovate, if we're not prepared to keep moving, and if we just stand still or sort of rest on the status quo, that is not a formula for success in the future. So for me, I think the Ontario College of Trades represents a very innovative, pretty bold, somewhat controversial step forward. We're doing something that hasn't been done before. I think it represents a logical next step forward. I know that the apprenticeship communities across Canada, talk to each other, observe each other very closely. In fact, I think, some elements of what happened in apprenticeship renewal in Saskatchewan 10 or 12 years ago reflected in what is being done in Ontario with the College of Trades. So For me, the strategy of success for apprenticeship is to continue to innovate and move forward. Don't fix what isn't broken, but do fix what is broken.
Yeah, and I guess my parting comment would be twofold. First of all, we need to continue to sell the value of apprenticeship as one of the key tools to make prosperity available to as broad a cross-section of our population as possible. And you know, we just need to continue to sell that because, as we've talked about earlier in the day, support seems to be eroding from certain sectors. The second thing is I agree with what Bob says. There are things we need to do better, and in particular, I think we need to look at different approaches that will enable more employers to step up to the plate and get involved in sponsoring apprenticeships.
Thank you, Randell, Bob, and Don. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our plenary session on Apprenticeship Strategies for Success. Please join me in thanking our three panelists as I present them with a small expression of our appreciation.